Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Dynamic Thriving Podcast. I am your host, Marianne Pack, author, publisher at EnvisionGreatness.com and Joy Advocate. And I'd love to guide you into all things life transformational. So in this series, I'm interviewing people who have become authors. And we're going to talk about not only their books that will encourage you and give you life, but also talk about how it impacted them, what it meant to them, how it has affected and improved their lives and their businesses. Because when we put our words into the world, it makes a difference, not only for the audience, not only for the readers, but also for us as writers and as we become authors. So my mission, of course, in my business, my publishing company, is to write the world happy, one word at a time. And in doing so, we're spreading more love and joy in the world. So today, my special guest is Ryan Hall, and I'm just so pleased to have Ryan. You may remember him also. He was on the Unmuted Voices podcast series this past year. So welcome, Ryan. I'm so glad you've joined me.
Really awesome to be here, Marianne, and I'm really honored for the invitation, and I'm really excited to talk about storytelling and how it really can transform the world.
Absolutely. So I'm going to jump right in and ask, who is Ryan and what good do you bring into the world?
Who is Ryan and what good do I bring into the world? Well, I am a storyteller from way back. I've always been a storyteller. I've always really been fascinated by stories. My grandfather, I just go ahead and start. My grandfather was one of the world's greatest campfire storytellers. And, just listening to some of the stories that he would just pull out of thin air about lightning bugs, about, mysterious creatures in the woods, just really got me fascinated by stories. And I really believe that sharing our stories, sharing our voices, sharing just who we are through the stories that we have. Everybody has a story that can change the world, be it fiction, which I am very well versed in, be it fiction, be it nonfiction. Everybody has a story that can change the world. And it's my goal through my books, through my company, is to help people share their story and change their world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're going to be talking today about his book, Mining for My Voice. So this is a memoir that he just recently published. Tell us a little bit about Mining for My Voice.
Mining for My Voice. I'm really excited to talk about this. We kind of teased this a little bit when I was on your podcast before. But what Mining for My Voice is, and here's a little copy.
All right.
But what Mining for My Voice is, it's a series of stories from my life. When I was writing this book, I was kind of struggling with finding like a narrative spine for it. And what this book ended up being is stories about people, events, and yes, creatures from my life who have shown me that my voice, I'm talking capital V voice here, that my voice matters in this world, that the people listen to what I have to say, that my words, my story, my message leaves an impact on the world. Because, for so long, when I was a kid, family trauma, just heartbreak, all that kind of stuff, it really kind of left me frozen in a way, kind of left my voice frozen. And I spent a lot of time alone growing up. I didn't have many friends. Honestly, my best friend was my TV and my Nintendo. But I always knew that there was something for me to say. But I just kept it so hidden. I just kept it hidden. I kept it really far behind me. And it's really been over the past few years, since about 2015, but it's really been over the past few years that I have really experienced a pretty significant personal transformation in learning how to not only own my voice, but to use it in a way that really affects a lot of people. Yeah. And that's really what this voice is about, because the subtitle is How a Meek and Scared Boy Uncovered a World-Rattling Voice. Mm-hmm. And that's really what happened. Finding this not really finding my voice, but really uncovering what has been there the entire time, because I don't think we lose our voice. I think we let it get buried underneath a lot of rubble, underneath a lot of pain and trauma. But we just forget that we have it.
Yeah.
We just forget that we have it. We forget that the people that people out there listen to what we have to say, that our words, our stories, our message really is important in the world, as leaders, as storytellers, as authors, as men. Our message really means people listen to what we have to say. And at its essence, that's what this book is about. And I'm under no delusion that this book, when I was first writing this book, right? When I was first writing this book, I was kind of under the delusion that nobody wants to read a memoir by somebody who lives, who's not a celebrity.
Right, yeah.
And because, celebrities, presidents, Grammy winners, Oscar winners, those are the type of people who write memoirs that make a big impact. I'm a guy who lives in Connecticut, who is a self-published author and a podcaster and all that good stuff. What business does my story have in sharing, in leaving any kind of impact with the world? And I feel like at its essence, that's what this book is about, is just kind of me as an ordinary, regular guy with a big message, sharing my story and hoping that it can affect at least one person's life.
Yeah, because so much of the time what we write about, I always say our mess is our message. And so what we live through, the trauma, the indoctrination, the whatever it is, even if it's a subtle influence that covers over our beautiful voice. I mean, that's why it was so important for me to have Unmuted Voices as not only a podcast, but the anthology. And, I loved having you talk about this even on that show, on that series. So, we do tend to, even if it's, I don't know, sometimes I think even if it's fiction or memoir or even self-help books or whatever, our message tends to be what we've worked through. And this is the same way. Mining for My Voice. Your book is, talks about those things that covered over that beautiful world-rattling voice, that you had to just peel those layers back and find it. I agree. It's not that we've lost it. It just gets covered over with all the indoctrination and the traumas that we can go through. So, talk a little bit about that, the mess, what you did go through, because as we heal through that, then that becomes that beautiful message. Because I know the end of the story is not, Ryan still with his muted voice. He's getting to express it. So how did you get from the scared little boy into now expressing it beautifully in the world?
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing that comes up for me in this situation is when we're growing up, I feel like we're the most impressionable when we're growing up, from like before the age of 7 through our teenage years.
Mm-hmm.
And just to kind of give you a little bit of lowdown on what happened between the age of 7 and 17 for me. I really saw my family almost just completely disintegrate.
Mm.
When I was 7, my aunt and her husband, my mom's sister and her husband, were killed in a car crash.
Oh.
December 1st, 1984, a date that is like tattooed onto the back of my soul. But they were killed in a car crash. My mom did not take that well, because it was barely a year removed from losing my grandmother. So my mom really fell into some self-medication, depression, and she really muted her own voice. And that was just for starters. Like there was a pretty significant family estrangement from my paternal grandparents. There were some, substance abuse and addictions going on in my family. I had a friend who survived a suicide attempt.
Oh.
And this all happened between the ages of 7 and 17. To say nothing of, losing my grandfather, the one who was the world's greatest campfire storyteller, but losing him when I was 14. So a lot of tragedy, a lot of trauma, just a lot of stuff got piled onto me at a very young age. And I feel like, and this is really the first time I think I really articulated this in the way that I'm about to, but I feel like a lot of that trauma, a lot of that tragedy was the layers of dirt and soil and rubble that just covered my voice.
Oh, yes.
That just covered my message, covered who I was in the world. Because I'll be totally honest with you, I didn't know who I was during the, from the age of 7, really up until my 30s. I didn't really know who I was. I didn't know just what I really wanted to be in the world. Mm-hmm. And just started, and that's why I call this mining from my voice, is just started picking away at the layers of rock and dirt and dust and tragedy to find who I am rather, at my essence, just really who I am at my soul. And that was just a lot of layers of stuff that I had to pick through in order to find, in order to really grow into the man that I am today, who actively seeks out opportunities like your podcast, like this book, like other things that we're going to talk about in this conversation, to share my message and my voice on a big, wide scale.
Absolutely. So how did you start kind of moving from that point into the healing that you're feeling now, that you're living now, because I know, timing is always seems to be everything. And so, in relation to that, why is it perfect now? Why was this the time? Had you healed enough that you felt secure? Or I know in notes back and forth to each other, you talked about you grew. The impact was that you grew in confidence. And so I want to hear some of those beautiful stories of the other side where the healing happened, because it's always about hope. Everything that I want to put out is always about bringing more love and joy and peace and hope into the world. So tell us those little beautiful moments of hope that came through for you.
I love that. And, if I can get through this without, without getting emotional, it'll probably be a miracle. But really a couple things come to mind. Just with what you just said. It's always darkest right before dawn. And I feel that I'll start with this. My dad passed away in 2014. December 23rd, 2014, 2 days before Christmas. He had been just really sick for a while. A lot of substance abuse going on with him. But my dad was a musician. And really his dream instrument was something called a Fender Rhodes piano. Now, if your audience isn't familiar, go back and listen to the song Get Back by the Beatles. There's a keyboard break in the bridge of that song that was played by Billy Preston, the late soul music artist. That was played on a Rhodes piano, just to kind of give you an idea of the context of what we're talking about here. From Steely Dan to Earth, Wind and Fire to Stevie Wonder, it was like a real staple in like 60s and 70s rock and R&B music. And that's why Dad loved it so much. It was a couple years after my mom passed away, he bought one. And my dad had just been in a deep, dark place after my mom passed away. And I would come over to his house and I would notice that more dust would start to form on the keys of this piano. And he was even talking about, hey, this, some people he was talking to was like, hey, I'd love to, get you to sit in with us. And I just lit up when he said that, because I knew how much he missed performing. But he never did. So, and I shared this in this book. It was maybe a month or so after my dad passed away. I was still just barely holding it together at that point. But I go over to his house to deal with some stuff. And I noticed all that dust on this piano. And I just said, screw it. I got a Swiffer dusting cloth, and I dusted it off. I plugged it into the amplifier. I can't play the piano, but I know what it sounds like. I plugged it into the amplifier. I turned it on. I plinked out a few notes, and I'm like, this is exactly what this is supposed to sound like. But that's really more of a metaphor of what happened in my mind at that point. Was like, I can't sit by just and abide another dusty piano in my life.
Yeah.
And that was the moment when I think I really found bedrock in my own personal transformation. I had been working with a life coach at that point. I was, really just starting to take therapy seriously. I was working with a life coach at that point. I started working on my first book. I started, thinking about moving from Alabama up to the New York area. I started taking like acting classes. I, started writing more. I started sharing more stories. But I think it was at that moment. This wasn't a conscious decision that I made at that point. But I think it was at that moment that I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Yeah. It's like the old, it's like one of my favorite movies, Network, from 1976, I think it's when it came out. But it's about the TV newscaster who essentially goes crazy. But there's that iconic line from that movie when he's giving his speech on the TV news show. When he's giving the speech, there's a iconic line, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take this anymore." Yes. I think that was my moment. I think that was my "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take this anymore" moment. And it has grown and multiplied and manifested itself in so many incredible ways. And, again, sometimes you just have to kind of look at where your life is at that moment and realize this ain't working for me anymore. This is just not working for me anymore. And, don't do it alone, though. Don't do it alone. Find people who are going to support you or who are going to love you, who are going to lift you up, and really, start growing from there. And I can tell you right now, this is not my first memoir. This is my first memoir, I should say. This is not my only memoir. I definitely feel like, because as long as there's, as long as this muscle inside my chest keeps beating, I can still draw breath, my brain still works, as long as I'm still here on the other side of the dirt, my story is never complete. And that's I think what the biggest lesson I want to share with your listeners about that is that your story is never complete as long as you're still breathing and living and growing. Your story is never complete, and there's going to be something that you can share with the world that people can really latch on to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And I always feel like when people author books, or even if it's just a chapter in an anthology, and we're going to talk about one that you've got coming up, but it offers us gifts, not only the reader, but we receive gifts. We receive, improvements in our life, the healing process, because putting it down on paper, telling that story is a very vulnerable situation, and it puts you out there, and then readers know your story. There's no hiding it. There's no going back after that. But writing always gives us a gift, no matter if you ever publish it or not. If it's in a journal, it's a gift to you, and it makes an impact. So what is some of those gifts? What are some of the things how it's impacted your life? Maybe even your business. How has it changed you as a man, as a author, as a publisher?
That is a great question. You said it earlier. It has given me more confidence than I think this book, and this is my third solo published book. Mm-hmm. but it has given me more confidence in not just myself as an author, but myself as a person. Because it's like you said, once you read this book, however you plan on reading it, but once you read this book, you're going to see some aspects of my life, of my story, that scared me to death to share. So many late nights, so many sleepless nights, so many just what in the hell are you thinking kind of moments of, why am I sharing this? Why am I going into detail on, just my dad's drug addiction? Why am I, and how it affected me? Why am I going into detail on all this stuff? Because this is like, it's exposing a really fresh wound that I have worked really hard at to heal. And, to be clear, when we're talking about healing, this is not a binary kind of thing. It's either you're unhealed or you're healed. It's always a process.
Oh, yes.
It's always a process when we're talking about this kind of healing. I mean, yeah, you can, I've got a couple of surgical scars. Those have healed. Like the memories of what happened to the surgeries, maybe not so much. But yeah, just really the healing and just the confidence of, I've shared this part of my story. I've shared this part of who I am, and I'm still here to tell my story. It didn't kill me.
You didn't die.
No.
Yes. Absolutely. So how are you using this book to, share your message, share just more love and joy in the world? Because I know it ends in healing. I know it ends in hope. It's not, like I said before, it didn't leave you a grown man still left with being the little scared boy who wouldn't speak up. And it's just like you were just talking about. It's always just layers, because there's things that I think, oh, I've healed through that and I'm okay. And then boom, I'm triggered by something that is like, there's another layer to unpack. As we like, it is a journey. It's constantly unfolding. So, how are you using this book to do that? To do just that, share more love and joy in the world. And then just real quickly, tell us where it's available. And I'll include all of those links in the show notes for everybody, but tell everybody kind of how you're using it and where they can get a hold of it.
Well, I'll answer the second part first. You can find Mining for My Voice on a little up and coming website called Amazon, in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle. You can order, and if you want it personally autographed from me, there's a way that you can order that from me directly. The turnaround time on that may be a little bit longer, because the way that I publish it is a print on demand kind of service. But I will give you full expectation on that. And I just, as of just a few days ago, it is now live on Audible and Apple audiobooks.
Yay for you.
Now that was an experience. Just to read through some super, super vulnerable things again. I found that I was hit by some of the same emotions, some of the same feelings, some of the same, worry of, why am I sharing this? But again, clearly I didn't die, because I'm having this conversation with you here today.
Absolutely.
But yes, it's that was another experience. But as Marianne said, you can certainly find all of the ways that you can get my book on Amazon or Audible or all that good stuff.
Yes, I'll have all those links in the show notes. Also, you can always email Ryan at royalheartscoaching@gmail.com, and that will also be in the show notes for your convenience. So let's see what else I want to ask you. Oh, I know. I want to talk to you just a minute about the up and coming anthology that you're offering for men, because again, this is an opportunity for somebody to walk with you, get a chapter written, and heal in the process, grow in the process, grow in confidence, get those gifts that writing and becoming a published author has to offer for you. So tell us a little bit about your up and coming book project.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that invitation, Marianne. Just a little background on that. I have been a part of a few collaborative books over the past few years, which in a way is how you and I first met.
Yes.
But the book that I'm in the enrollment stage of right now is called The Expanding Man Chronicles. Now, what I'm looking for in that story are men who have simply expanded the definition of what it means to be a man in this world. Either through healing generational trauma, through finding passion again for a previous life or a previous project, but anything that has helped you become a better, stronger, but more heart-centered man in this world. Because I feel like, yes, healthy masculinity, really just healthy masculinity and that healthy balance of, that masculine and feminine energy, I think really is what helps the world go around.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of times we as men lose connection with that side of us, because we're all in that, just super like left brain, we've got to make money, we've got to, provide for our family, we've got to be responsible, all that stuff. But we might put a dream in mothballs. We might have had a passion once upon a time to play the guitar, let's say. And there's, again, it's like the dusty piano situation. We lose that connection with who we are. We lose that connection with our truth, but we also lose our connection with what we are as a man. Mm-hmm. So in the Expanding Man Chronicles, I'm looking for stories of men who have really found themselves again to be able to share themselves as men in this world. Because one of my, I think, least favorite but most misunderstood phrases when it comes to men in this world is the phrase alpha male. I feel like it's very misunderstood. And a lot of times we're in a world where we have to be that kind of alpha male leader in the world. But there's such a negative connotation of that phrase that if you identify yourself as such, there's a way to bring more heart and connection and joy and love from that place, just to, just to help balance things out. And those are the kind of stories that I'm looking for in the Expanding Man Chronicles. And there will be, if somebody out there who's listening, if you've got a story, or of a man who's got a story like that in this, that would be perfect for this book. There will be a link to an application in the show notes, or just shoot me an email, and I would love to have a conversation with you, because I've got a lot of passion behind this. I've got a lot of, I'm feeling a lot of purpose behind this, and some of the men that I've talked to who have already signed up for this have stories that would just blow, just absolutely blow your mind. And I can't wait to share that. Looking to get that out in the fall, and I'm about to wrap up enrollment on that. I know we're in the middle of April right now, but I'm extending enrollment through the month of April on that. So if you have something that you want to share, get that to us. And even if it's past April, and you're watching us or listening to us on a podcast form, I'd still love to have a conversation with you. I can't once the book comes out, but I'd still love to have a conversation with you and see if there's a spot in there, because I really I definitely want this to be a safe space for men to really share deeply vulnerable stories about themselves, about who they are as leaders in their world, as leaders in their workplace, in their home, in their school, just really heart-centered leaders in the world.
Absolutely so much. So I so appreciate you spending your time with us and letting us hear about how mining for my voice impacted you. Going again over the healing process, peeling a few more layers off. As you wrote the book, as you published the book, and then created the Audible, more layers had to come off as you found your voice. And so this is all part of becoming an author, folks. Again, whether it's a chapter in a book, in an anthology, or whether you have a book being called through you that's on your heart that you want to connect. I know Ryan's always available for that. And so are we at envisiongreatness.com. And you can get a hold of me through this. My links will also be in the show notes. But if you have some kind of a message that you've worked through, your mess is your message, and you want to write about that, how it's impacted you and how you've healed. This is what we do at Envision Greatness. So if you want to explore publishing, there is a link to a call that you can have with me. Let's look and see where your voice needs to be mined and shared with the world. So all these links, again, folks, will be in the show notes. And Ryan, do you have any parting words of wisdom that you want to share with our audience before we sign off?
I really do. And again, Marianne, thank you so much for the invitation. This has been a really, really enlightening conversation with me. And, like I said earlier, this is really the first time I've really articulated a lot of this stuff in this particular way. So, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. But to answer your question and to leave your listeners with a little bit of, with some words of wisdom, that with apologies to Paul McCartney, I'm not going to whisper, but some just a few words of wisdom is that you never lose your voice.
Yes.
You never lose it. It's always there. Your story is always there. Your message is always there, because it's a part of you. It's a part of who God made you to be. It's a part of who you are as a human being. And while your message, while your story, you might not be like on a TED Talk stage or being interviewed by Stephen Colbert or speaking like at a Tony Robbins convention in front of a full basketball arena. But if your story can help one person
yes,
to remember who they are, remember their message, and get reconnected with their message, then your story changes the world.
Mm-hmm.
It might not be on a grand stage, but your story changes the world, even if it just affects one person, because that one person can affect 5 people. Those 5 people can affect 5. It spreads, it grows, it really multiplies. Your voice is never lost. You just have to dig through the dirt and the dust and the rubble to find it. You have to mine for it, dare I say.
Absolutely. And that's why I think I was so impressed with all the guests that I had on the podcast for Unmuted Voices. And then the 12 additional people that chose to be in the book, because every story is so different, but that same underlying message of having that squashed, that their voices and being muted, and then coming to the place, those aha moments, like you said, this is enough. We're done. It's over. I have to do something about it. And they all came to this in the book, in the podcast series. We all had to come to the place where enough is enough. We can't live this way and sustain life. So to have a sustainable life where we can finally begin to thrive in joy, we had to make some shifts, and we had to work with coaches or mentors or writing coaches or whatever the case happened to be. We had to work with people. And that's why I'm such a big proponent of coaching, because we can't do it on our own. We're not Lone Rangers. I've tried long enough to know it doesn't work. So I so appreciate you, Ryan. Thank you so much. Be sure, everybody, if you know a gentleman that they have a dynamic story and something that they've healed through, and you've seen life changes in them, make sure that they get a hold of Ryan. All the links that you're going to need to get a hold of Ryan is going to be in the show notes for your convenience. Send this podcast to them. Send them the links so that they can get a hold of Ryan and be in the Expanding Man Chronicles. The open enrollment is still there. So send them to this podcast right away and get them on Ryan's list and have a conversation with Ryan. Thank you, Ryan. I so appreciate you.
My pleasure, Marianne. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And remember, you are joy, looking for a way to express. Let's do that by getting you into the position of writing your own book or a chapter in an anthology somehow, to help you go through that process of becoming a published author. And you will find such joy and such healing and so many gifts. We appreciate you. Thank you and love you. See you next time.